Well, when you and I were all together last week, I said that political violence is a national scourge in our times. Today I can disclose to you further actions by federal law enforcement in combating that violence. Last year, President Trump issued National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, which directed the Department of Justice to prioritize politically motivated violence. To accomplish that mission, the Deputy Attorney General stood up Joint Task Force Vanguard to enforce a national security strategy to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt those who engage in political violence and intimidation. Today, a federal indictment was unsealed, charging 15 defendants with conspiracy to impede or injure federal officers and other charges related to efforts of two Minneapolis-based Antifa groups that violently opposed the enforcement of federal law in our state. The defendants are members and associates of Direct Action Minnesota. They are charged with conspiracy to impede or injure a federal officer, solicitation to commit a crime of violence, interstate threats, interstate stalking, assault on a federal officer, and destruction of government property. Earlier this morning, agents of Homeland Security Investigations conducted a coordinated law enforcement operation culminating in the arrest of 12 of the 15 defendants. One defendant had already been in custody on other federal charges. 2 defendants remain fugitives at large. Today's charges and arrests reflect a broad federal effort to address organized, lawless behavior which seeks to disrupt the execution of federal law, endanger law enforcement, and importantly, endanger the very communities that these defendants falsely claim to be protecting. Be assured, the Department of Justice and my U.S. Attorney's Office has and will distinguish between lawful protest and criminal conduct. These defendants have been charged not for what they said, but for what they did. They all joined an agreement, a conspiracy, to interfere with lawful immigration enforcement operations. The conspiracy was not to interfere by their voice, but to do it by force. That's a crime, and it will not be tolerated in the United States. Direct Action Minnesota emphasizes their violent, militant approach to politics and are highly critical of nonviolent, peaceful protests. You see here a Facebook post from one of the defendants, Cameron Kennedy, writing, quote, "We need to become ungovernable." As the name suggests, Direct Action Minnesota is an organization dedicated to direct action against federal law and immigration enforcement. This action is not peaceful, it's obstructive, disruptive, and unlawful. The organization trains its members in the aggressive use of shields against law enforcement, surveillance, operational planning, and rapid mobilization against law enforcement actions. Though investigations are ongoing, what we know now is that Direct Action Minnesota is comprised of members of subgroups. For example, the Black Hat Workers Collective. The Black Hat Workers Collective is a Minneapolis-based Antifa affinity group which advocates, promotes, and utilizes militant tactics and violence. Here you can see that their Facebook cover page shows as a banner the burning down of the Minneapolis Police Department's 3rd Precinct. One of the leaders of Direct Action Minnesota, Defendant Kyle Wagner, identifies himself as Antifa, and he doesn't shy away from it.
My name is Kyle, I'm Antifa, and there's so much rage in me that I've had to record this like 15 times trying to get the message out. They fucked up, okay? Go watch my other videos, doesn't matter if you're not here and you're not caught up, you missed the fucking fight. But if you are, it's time to suit up. Boots on the ground, Nicollet and fucking 26th. My house is 4 blocks away. Anywhere between Franklin and Nicollet and 26th and Nicollet. Show up ready to go. Okay? Not talking about peaceful protests anymore. We're not talking about having polite conversations anymore. I am talking specifically to my fucking followers. This is everything I have fucking talked about, and this is exactly what I said was gonna happen. This is exactly what I said was gonna fucking come when we didn't fucking go and march on fucking Whipple with guns. Sorry, but welcome to America 2026, where Second Amendment is the only thing that's gonna keep you fucking protected from literal fucking Nazi gunmen that are killing innocent people in the street with impunity. This is not a fucking joke. There's nothing fun to chant about it. Get your fucking guns and stop these fucking people.
We're not talking about peaceful protests. His words, not mine. During Operation Metro Surge, Direct Action Minnesota infiltrated and exploited lawful protests to more efficiently carry out its unlawful direct actions, targeting operations involving ICE as well as other federal law enforcement, and as well as other state law enforcement. In order to achieve the ends of the conspiracy, Direct Action Minnesota was highly organized, holding meetings on a regular basis, and engaged in what they called operational security, or OPSEC. The indictment unsealed today includes a focus on 2 days in which Direct Action Minnesota organized and participated in actions against federal and local law enforcement on January 23, 2026, and on March 1st, 2026. On those days, Direct Action Minnesota members deployed what they called hard and soft blockades against federal law enforcement, as well as against Hennepin County Sheriff's deputies. Direct Action Minnesota shut down operations at the federal Whipple building, a government building just north of the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport and the main hub for several federal agencies. Members of their hard blockade team used vehicles, RV trailers that they would overturn, check hedgehogs, and ice blocks that they would throw at law enforcement to obstruct roads used by law enforcement near the Whipple building in order to impede the movement of law enforcement. Members of their soft blockade team used homemade shields constructed from plastic, wood, and metal to physically resist the efforts of law enforcement and to aggressively break through teams of officers on foot. Direct Action Minnesota members also engaged in what they called commuting tactics, which included identifying, following, surveilling, harassing, and confronting law enforcement officers. Conspiracy members even followed law enforcement officers from locations like the Whipple building, to the officers' homes. For example, as alleged in the indictment on May 4, 2026, defendant Isaac Sant followed federal officers from the Whipple building all the way to Hudson, Wisconsin, where St. Croix County deputies stopped him. Such stalking and other direct actions against law enforcement are criminal, they're un-American, and they'll be met with swift justice. That's why we're here today. To those who choose to threaten or harm federal officers, we will hold you accountable. We will defend federal officers, we will protect the public, we will enforce the law. I want to thank our partners at Homeland Security Investigations for their outstanding work on this case, and I now ask the Special Agent in charge of Homeland Security Investigations here in Minnesota, Michael McCarthy, to provide further illumination for us.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Rosen, for your steadfast partnership. Good morning. My name is Michael McCarthy, and I am the Special Agent in charge for Homeland Security Investigations St. Paul. Today's announcement is the result of a thorough and months-long investigation into a deeply concerning trend: coordinated violence targeting federal law enforcement officers and facilities. These acts were designed to create chaos, disrupt operations, and threaten the safety of our officers and our community. Every day, officers and agents kiss their loved ones goodbye, fully aware of the dangers they face as they risk their lives to protect their communities. Each and every one of us in the law enforcement community does so with the ultimate goal of making it home to our families each night. We are sons, daughters, mothers, and fathers. We swore an oath to protect and serve, and we place the public's well-being above our own safety without hesitation and often without recognition. Make no mistake, officers and agents do not have the luxury of deciding when they should and should not do their job. The law is the law. Over the past several months, we have seen organized groups deliberately plan and carry out criminal acts, including assaults, threats, destruction of government property, and efforts to obstruct federal officers. Much of the recent civil unrest in the metro area has been linked to anti-ICE demonstrations. Let me be clear. Peaceful protest is a protected right and a cornerstone of our democracy. We respect and defend that right. However, there's a clear line that cannot be crossed. When protest turns into rioting, violence, or criminal activity, it becomes unlawful, and it will not be tolerated. Unfortunately, some groups have crossed that line. Working closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office, our investigation uncovered extensive planning, material support, and coordinated attacks against federal personnel and facilities. Our teams have worked tirelessly, conducting surveillance, reviewing camera footage, and analyzing large volumes of information to identify those responsible. I want to thank all the agents and staff whose dedication and professionalism made these indictments possible. Our message is clear. You may not agree with the laws. You may protest the laws, but you must follow the laws or face the consequences. It is not optional. We will enforce the law. Any attempt to undermine it through violence or intimidation will be met with decisive action. Our primary responsibility is to ensure the safety of our officers and the broader community. Today's arrests are an important milestone, but this is not the finish line. HSI and our partners remain committed to identifying, investigating, and bringing to justice anyone who promotes or engages in violence against law enforcement or our communities. Again, I thank the U.S. Attorney's Office for their partnership. Together, we are committed to protecting our officers, our communities, and the rule of law. Thank you.
If you have some questions, I'll be happy to take them. I just ask that each of you just tell me your name and the organization that you're here reporting for, and eventually over time I'll start to learn all of your names. Yes, ma'am.
Madison McVan with Minnesota Reformer. The Star Tribune has reported that more than 1/3 of prosecutors' cases against people charged with protesting or stalking federal officers during Operation Metro Surge have already been dismissed or failed in some way. Why is this case different?
Well, I don't think any cases have failed in any way, but I will tell you, read the indictment and you'll understand the full magnitude of this case. Yes, sir.
Well, to follow up on that, it's actually half now. I've been tracking these 18 U.S.C. 111 cases closely. Of 36, 18 have been dropped entirely, 3 with prejudice. There are non-prosecution agreements in at least 11 others. A magistrate judge called one of the affidavits that Special Agent Richard Berger had signed, one of many, a false affidavit, and was unclear why your office was continuing to prosecute this case. How can the courts be assured, how can juries be assured that what's in this indictment and these affidavits is true and is based on facts?
You watch how this case plays out, you watch how the evidence plays out, and the evidence will prove it all out. Yes, sir.
Clint Combs, Minnesota Spokesman Recorder. On January 22, federal agents went to the Yellow Hotel and were seeking an arrest warrant for Nikema Levy Armstrong. They mistaken one of her roommates and tackled her. She wasn't arrested until several months later. Jordan Kushner, Nakima Levy Armstrong's attorney, said that there was a deal for her to turn herself in peacefully. Was there a deal between the DOJ's office and Nakima Levy Armstrong for her to peacefully turn herself in? And if so, what led to that decision to arrest her at the hotel?
The answer is any deal for her peaceful surrender was that she walk out of the hotel room that she was hiding in, and she says, "I surrendered to the federal law enforcement officers that were in the hallway," and that's exactly what occurred. Yes, sir.
Can you say where, Scott Johnson with the Safe Power Line, can you say where the video of Kyle Wagner came from?
I think I can say.
Instagram.
Instagram, Scott.
Thank you.
Yes.
Taylor Rivera, WCCO Radio. What can you tell us about the fugitives involved in this case? Where does that investigation stand, and can you share who that is?
Are you talking about the two people that I
Yes.
said that are still at large? These are two people who know that they are being sought by federal law enforcement and have not yet surrendered. We expect that they will surrender peacefully. They are aware of it, and I think that they probably understand.
How do they know that the indictment was only unveiled at 11 a.m.?
We are aware that they know specifically, and I do believe that they will understand that the best move for them is to surrender. Yes.
Janet Shortle, Care 11, you talked about to threaten, those who wish to threaten or harm, they will be held accountable. They will be prosecuted. Here in Minnesota and across the country, people still have questions as to why there isn't any prosecution or any charges filed against the officers who shot and killed Renee Good or the officers who shot and killed Alex Price.
Those investigations are ongoing. They are ongoing in the way that proper federal law enforcement investigations ought to proceed. They will proceed to their completion, and they'll proceed to their completion in the proper pace and at the proper time.
So they are investigating both cases, the shooting of Renee Good and the shooting of Alex Price?
I think that's been reported many, many times that both.
Who's
Just checking
investigating
in on
which
that.
agencies? Who's investigating which agencies are investigating?
We're not going to get into the details of those investigations here today, but I can assure all of you that it has been reported previously. Federal law enforcement is investigating in both cases. Yes, sir.
Nathan O'Neill, Fox 9. You talked about coordinated attacks. What kind of injuries did officers sustain as part of these campaigns, if any? Can you elaborate on that?
I can't elaborate on that today, and I don't believe I used the word attacks, but if I did, I stand by it.
Andrew Hazard, Zahan Journal. For defendant Wagner, did you guys have any documentation of him actually bringing any firearms out into the street, or any of his followers bringing firearms out into the street after his video?
I think the specifics of the evidence in that case we're going to allow to roll out in the normal course of events through a proper prosecution, and right now we'll let the indictment stand on their own. Yes.
Hi, Karen Sullivan, Fox News. I'm just wondering if these two groups, the Black Cat Workers Collective and Direct Action, are they still operating? And are those two groups that you continue to monitor?
Well, what I will say with regard to ongoing federal law enforcement efforts is that if you are actively conspiring to impede law enforcement, actively conspiring to commit the acts that today's indictment alleges, you ought to go on the assumption that we're watching you and that will get you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Ben Henry, 5 Eyewitness News. Words like attack and assault were used during this press conference. What evidence do you have? I know it was asked if any officers were injured, but what evidence do you have that these assaults and attacks took place?
Oh, we have video evidence, we have eyewitness testimony, and all of that evidence will roll out in the normal
Why
course
not
of a
share it in the
prosecution.
press conference today like you did with a few still images? Why not show some of these attacks today?
We're showing what we think is necessary in order to get the story out, and I recommend that you read the indictment. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Aaron Johnson, Community Press. About these organizations, is apart from to kind of ride the coattails of that, we saw a lot of interactions with ICE and community members all across the city. Were there any sort of corresponding insignias that identified them as these specific groups?
I'm sorry, that identified who? These 15 defendants as these specific
yeah,
groups?
you said Black Hat, and forgive me, I forget the other off the top of my head. Were they wearing armbands, logos that specifically identify, forgive me, I have a disability, I've read, that
Take your time.
identify their group, or whatever we want to call it?
So the MO of these particular operators is to exploit legal protests that were ongoing for their illegal acts. As a part of that, they did not always disclose who they were to those that might otherwise been lawful actors in protest.
Since I don't have the indictment in front of me, can you tell me of the 15, how many are from Minnesota?
Good question. I think, do we have that number with us? All of them. All of them.
Are they all from the Twin Cities area?
Ron?
They are.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Rob Kuzniel with CNN. Kyle Wagner identified himself as Antifa. How are you connecting the others in your peep and defendants to?
Okay, so that again falls into the realm of the evidence that'll roll out in the course of the prosecution, and I understand that the indictments were only unsealed 15 minutes before this press conference, but I do recommend that you read it, and your question will at least be answered in part. Yes, sir.
This might also be in the indictment, but like, how is DOJ, how do you define Antifa? Like, what is Antifa?
So what is Antifa goes beyond, I think, the scope of what this indictment is. But what we can tell you is that we have plenty of people that self-identify in that way, and you might want to ask them that
Is
question.
that a crime, to be part of affiliating with this group, if it is even a group?
It's a crime to conspire for the purpose of impeding or injuring federal officers. It's a crime to conspire together in order to commit crimes of violence. It's a crime to get together to stalk. It's a crime to get together to make threats. It's a crime to get together to assault federal officers. It's a crime to get together to destroy federal property.
So those
Yes.
are all stock crimes. How many officers were injured or actually assaulted as a result of these 15 events?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that anything I just said is a thought crime. I don't think, I'm not following the question, yes.
Well, how many were injured? How many of these officers were injured as a result of these alleged actions? That was the question here.
So again, all of the numbers on this will all roll out in the course of the prosecution. But you understand here that we have a group of people who quite deliberately got together, planned violence, used violence, and whether or not the extent to which they actually achieved their ends of harming people, whether it was by the overturning of vehicles and RVs in the street, whether it was by the throwing of ice blocks at vehicles, whether it was by use of their vehicles in other ways, whether it was by their stalking, whether or not they actually, at the end of the day, caused bodily harm is not the measure of whether or not they committed a serious federal crime. And I would dare say, we just cannot have in this country all people getting together, engaging in all of these violent acts, and then simply saying, well, nobody got hurt, so how bad could it have been?
Are you saying that no officers were injured
I'm not
directly as a
saying that.
result of this?
Do you anticipate more arrests related to Operation Metro Surge like these?
We'll talk about other arrests at other times today. We'll talk about these 15. Yes, sir.
And Dick Ferraro, Pioneer Press. I believe President Donald Trump has labeled Antifa as a terrorist group. Did you consider those charges in these cases?
Well, we considered and we charged the crimes for which we have the evidence to convict these individuals. I can take two more questions. Yes.
One last follow-up on what I was asking about earlier. So there are internal investigations by Border Patrol and DHS with the officers involved in the Pretty and the Good shootings. If those come up with any evidence, would you consider charging any officers in the shootings of Renee Good and Alex Pretty?
If the evidence shows that we can prosecute and convict somebody beyond a reasonable doubt, we will charge. We will not undercharge, we will not overcharge, but we will pursue federal prosecution in the manner that the evidence dictates. Yes, sir.
Is the indictment posted online?
Great question. Is the indictment posted online yet?
It's publicly filed.
It's publicly filed now with the court.
Can we get case numbers?
We will, I'll tell you what, ask Hong Bui, who is in the back of the room, and Hong will make sure that you get all of it. All right.
26CR 115 is what it is.
60 or 115?
An estimate of how many agents were injured in the attacks?
I think we've already been through that. All right. Thank you very much.